Well, today, guys, we are not only talking about birth, we are talking about free birth, and not unplanned like mine was. We are talking about planned, unassisted home births. And this woman, let me tell you, she is amazing, has incredible stories. She had a 10-pounder and a 12-pounder at home, her and her husband. Welcome, please, to the Faith-Based Birthing Podcast, Su-Yin De La Rosa. How are you? Thank you so much for being here.
I am doing so great. I'm so blessed to be here. I'm honored to be here. Thank the Lord for our testimony and that we overcome with our testimony. And I just can't wait to get mine out there for everyone to hear.
I'm so glad that you are sharing. Thank you so much. I love this. I love, and we were talking about that a little bit ago, like you overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. And if we're not sharing, right? And we'll get into this a little bit later. This is actually probably going to be a multi-part series with Su-Yin because we want to be sure that we're covering so much here, right? This is such a rich topic. And so we want to be sure that we're covering everything that we can, but like it matters that we're sharing our testimony because even just in us talking, I realized that had I shared even more of mine, part of her story, she might not have had to walk through some of the stuff that she did. So it's crazy. Share your story. Everyone has a story and your story matters because out there somewhere, someone is looking to borrow courage from you so that they can walk through whatever it is they have to walk through. So you have to step up into your purpose. Ephesians 2:10, right? You have to step up into your purpose to be who you were created to be and discover that purpose and then walk out in it because there's someone waiting on you right now to be who you were created to be. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about, you have 6 kids, right? Tell us a little bit about you first.
Yes, I have 6 children. I live in California. I am 33 years old and I have my first child at 17, was a teen baby and my only baby girl. And then I had 5 boys with my husband and I met him when she was 5. So we just started having babies on babies and we haven't really stopped since then. We have a call on our heart and just urgency from God to just really trust him with our womb, trust him with our reproduction, trust him with his plans over our plans. And, it took us a long time to get to this point, but we've decided that, he knows best. And so we just trust him. And we had these 5 beautiful boys. They are such a blessing. All of them have been 10 pounds or more. And our last one was 12 pounds. So I'm kind of a bigger boned woman. I'm 5'6". And my husband is 6'2". So we're a little bit of a bigger bone family. So it was kind of expected, but thankfully I've been so blessed with no tearing whatsoever with any of my big boys. So if you're worried about having a big child, know that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to tear. I tore with my daughter who is 7'14", like your child. And, I tore with her terribly in the hospital, but then with my 10 pounders, nothing. So I'm so grateful. And that's a little bit about me.
All right, so now let's talk about your birth journey because I know you've birthed in the hospital and at home, so and free birth. So tell me how that progression has gone for you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was pregnant at 16 years old, I started going to birth classes. My mom was really into natural birth. So that's where all of this started. And I started Lamaze classes and just learning how to breathe through. And actually, when I was in labor with my daughter at 17 years old, I, was driven to the hospital by my family saying, you're in labor. And I was in labor, but I refused to get out because I said, I'm not ready and I don't want them to be with me too long. So even then I knew I don't really want to be in the hospital. And so, I get to the hospital about 9 centimeters with her and, they were just terrible to me. I'm just going to be honest. It was a military hospital. They were very cold. They were very rude. There was no compassion. I didn't feel any love from anybody. I felt like they were just judging me for how young I was. And, when I was birthing, actually, when her head was there, at the hospital, the doctor went ahead and just reached his entire both hands into me and went like this around her head inside my vagina. I tore terribly. When she did come out, she had to be resuscitated because I just don't think she was ready to be pulled out the way that she was forcefully. So it was a really traumatic experience for me. And after that birthing experience, I decided, I was a junior in high school. I said, I want to be a nurse. I want to be a labor and delivery nurse because I want to make a difference. I want to make other people's birth experience better than mine. And that became my full passion. And so I just dove right in. And senior year, I did a presentation on birth. And, it just started from there. College, boom. I went to be a nurse right away. It took me 2 years straight up, no waiting, nothing. I was determined to be a labor and delivery nurse. So I actually have worked in labor and delivery as a nurse. So it's been really cool. It's been a great journey. And now I know that I kind of want to diverge away from the medical system, but it's nice to be a light in the darkness. It's nice to be a faith-filled person. And all the nurses even say at the station, they're like, send Sue, because she's like the little doula around here. And so I would go into people's rooms. I just encourage them and pray for them and, uplift them in the kind of like a doula nurse type of way. So anyway, that's kind of my journey. So I started there with my daughter, and then I started having my sons in the hospital too. And after 3 sons in the hospital, my husband started to listen to me about home birth, but it took 3 sons because I remember mentioning it to my husband, and my husband was not on board. And I feel like a lot of men are not, because they want safety for us. They want the best for us. They're men, they're protectors, right? So to them, they think the medical system is the safest thing. So I don't blame him. But after the 3rd birth being so traumatic, once again, just completely disrespected my wishes, just disregarded me, completely went against what I asked for. I would tell them no, and they would literally, shoot me up with a needle. And it was like, there was just no for them. And being a nurse, I know how to advocate for myself, even in birth, and even I couldn't do it. Even I couldn't. And I just remember trying to get up while my baby's head was coming, and they started yelling at me and just screaming, and I had to send a nurse out. And it was just this wild experience. So after that, my husband listened, and then we, with our 4th son, decided to plan an unassisted free birth. And that was our first unassisted free birth. And then with our 5th son, again, we planned an unassisted free birth.
So your first home births were both planned unassisted births, right?
Correct.
So mine were unassisted. My first home births were unassisted as well. Mine were not planned unassisted. The midwife just didn't believe I was in labor and didn't make it. But anyway, so with your sons in the hospital, were those completely natural births as well?
Completely unmedicated natural births.
Yeah. And I want to be really clear in this sometimes, because I think we use the terminology natural birth and everybody's like, oh, well, every birth is natural, whatever. So there is natural is what we call med-free birth, right? Like that's what most people call a non-medicalized, you're not using substances in those situations. And so because people call it natural birth, that's what I typically refer to. And then there's also physiological birth, which is a complete undisturbed process. That's God's divine design. And when left alone, that process will just happen, right? Like it will just occur. And so birth was never meant to be managed like it is. And there's whole long history that you can look up there. But that's another story for another day. But I want you to understand that if we're using terms natural birth or med-free birth or physiological birth or, things like that, we want you to understand the terms that we're talking about right now. So anyway, both of my hospital births were med-free as well. And I didn't choose it because I was like some big crunchy person, right? Like I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and I didn't want anything to interfere with my extremities after birth because your hormones are already crazy all over the place anyway, right? And so that's why I chose it. I'm not crunchy. That's what's funny. But anyway, so now what brought about, so you graduate, I'll say graduate from the hospital birth to home birth. And why did you go directly to unassisted birth? Were you just like, you know what? I think I've got this down pat now. Plus you have medical background training. Like, so walk me through that process, because most people will be like, there is no way. If I'm doing a home birth, yeah, that's a big stretch, but definitely not a free birth. Like, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was pregnant with my 3rd son, I was still a nurse, but I had never worked in labor and delivery. Well, a doula friend of my sister's, actually came to me and in my inbox and was asking how my pregnancy was going, which is so sweet, right? And I told her that, I didn't really want to birth in the hospital. I was like really fed up with the hospital. And she mentions freebirth. And she's like, you know, that you can walk into the hospital and tell them, hands off, don't touch me. I'm here for help if I need it, but don't touch me. And honestly, I've never done that, but she told me you can do that. She said you can walk in the hospital and refuse every single thing. And so then she was like, well, you can do that, or you can just give birth to your baby at home. And I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I thought that was completely illegal. And so this doula's here telling me, yeah, it's called unassisted birth. And she started to send me Facebook groups. And so Facebook groups is where I started to see women are actually doing this successfully. I saw videos and pictures and stories, and I'm like, this is a real thing. So I'm pregnant with my third son. And I bring it up to my husband. Well, he's completely against it. He won't watch a video. He is disgusted. He's terrified. Like, he's seen it twice already, but he's disgusted. He won't even entertain the thought of a home birth. So that's my third son. So while we go to the hospital, and again, like I mentioned, I was very traumatized in that hospital experience. Just severely. I mean, I was with a doctor instead of a midwife. My other ones have been with a midwife. This one was with a doctor, and she was already just negative from the start. I'm like, I want a lotus birth. Well, you know, if it's not safe, we can't do that, you know, and it's just from the start. From the minute I walked in the hospital, there's just something. She didn't want to entertain any of my wishes. And so she made that happen. And, you know, I'm really upset too about the lotus part because she severed the cord without permission and went ahead and took her little needle and sucked up his blood to send off and do whatever they do with that precious, beautiful stem cell blood. And turns out my son got jaundice. You know, I couldn't believe the way no doesn't mean no in the hospital. You know, in any other situation in life, if you say no and someone decides to mess with you anyway, they're raping you or they're going to court for that, right? No means no, but not in the hospital. And so once that happened, it really hit my husband hard too. You know, my husband felt that. And when they shot me up with that Pitocin, I had the worst contractions of my life after that. And they blamed it on, oh, well, this is your fourth child, so it's going to be normal to have bad after pains. Really? Because with my fifth and sixth, I didn't feel any of that. So tell me why. Yeah, it doesn't nothing to do with that. It was because you shot me up with Pitocin, even though I asked you not to. I'm not joking. They took a needle and shot me in my leg anyway. So after that, and the pain I went through, I thought I was dying. And my husband just agreed. You know, he was like, I didn't like the way they treated you. And he was really hurt by that situation that he actually started to entertain home birth with my fourth son. So once I was pregnant with my fourth son, I dove all in. I learned everything I could. I got the books and the Facebook groups. I just started asking tons of questions in those groups. I started ordering supplies. I got all prepared, and, you know, it turned out to be a great birth. So sorry if I rambled on, because I think I answer your.
I love it. I love it. I'm so glad that I love your passion, and I'm so glad that you're sharing so much. Like, women need to hear this. And you know what? There are absolute situations where your doctor is very supportive. So my first hospital birth, my doctor was actually very supportive, and we had conversations from the time I went into his office. And, you know, I had my list of things, and I asked about water birth in his office, and he looked at me and he was like, no normal society does water birth. You know, that's something invented by blah, blah, blah. And I said, so is an epidural. He said, touche. Like, and that was the end of that conversation, right? And but then when we get to that point to, you know, I'm ready to push or whatever, I wasn't ready because he wasn't engaged, but I'm at a 10, right? So let's do this. And so they told me to push. And so I'm laying there and I'm like, guys, he's not coming down. Like, what's going on? And so the doctor's sitting there. He's all, you know, outfitted up with everything, and he's just sitting there. And so like an hour into this pushing extravaganza, because they've laid me on the bed at this point, and I'm like, guys, this isn't working. Can I move? And they were like, where are you going to move to? I said, I'm going to flip around on my knees and see if I can get some, you know, traction going there. And he was like, sure, we don't normally have that happen, but go ahead, you know. But y'all, he sat there for 3.5 hours waiting on me. So like, and then at the end of that, you know, he was like, Lori, we're going to have to do a C-section if he's not coming, you know, started threatening with that. And then it was like, I think if I cut you, he'll come out. Right. Like, and so I gave to that. And he did, but nobody knew he was 10.5. Right. We didn't know bowling ball was coming out. But so anyway, like, I love that you're sharing all this because people need to know that there are supportive doctors who will sit there and wait on you. And there are non-supportive doctors who are like, no, 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 let's get this done and go, right? And what you have to understand, and were you still in the military hospital at that point?
No.
Okay. But what you have to understand is there's a difference in military hospitals, right? But these are these people's training. This is what they do day in and day out. And you can attest to this working in labor and delivery, right? Like people have their ways about how they do it. And when someone comes in and disrupts that, it catches them off guard. And a lot of times it's not personal. It's just they're checking off their list of everything that they have to do, right? But sometimes you mess with that ego a little bit. Sometimes they don't like a young girl telling this experienced doctor, unless, I mean, we're just being real here, this experienced doctor, how they need to do their job, right? And so there's some ego there to deal with. And as hard as it is, you have to be relationally intelligent, but you also have to be firm. And if you have to get to a point where you say, do not touch me, you do not have the authority to do that. And there will be legal ramifications if that happens, because I am saying no. Know that you have a right, you have a voice. There's a federal code of regulations that dictates where all of their guidelines come from. And so when you see best practices or patient rights guidelines, they are actually coming from a federal code of regulations. And when you dig into that and find out what it says in there, you have the right to refuse anything, right? So just so we're clear on that. But
And
anyway, there are laws.
first, sorry, Sacred Birth Doula on Instagram has a rights over my birth package for every state. And if you hand them that rights over my birth package, they will be scared of you. They will watch their steps, watch their words. They will listen to no. I wish I had that birth packet. So if you guys need that, Sacred Birth Doula on
Yes,
Instagram.
yes, yes. And hopefully she will be on too. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
um, it is it is vital that you understand this. All right. So anyway, so we get to, now you've decided you're going to do a home birth. Your husband is okay with it, right? And now, not only, honey, are we doing a home birth, we're going to do it by ourselves. Like, how does that transition happen?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna be real. We live in California. We're a young couple, and we're young with 6 kids. We don't have the funds to pay a midwife, and our insurance doesn't cover midwives here in California. I don't know if that's different in other states, but in California, they don't cover midwives. Midwives are like a fallacy in California. So or more of like a luxury, call it, right? So out here they charge about $6,000 to $8,000 a birth or more, depending on the area. We lived in Monterey County before. It was at $10,000 for a midwife. So immediately it was like the price. It was like, okay, we don't want to pay this. And my husband's whole thinking was like, we're going to save money on this birth, because the other births we got charged bills, and had private insurance, and they still charged us thousands of dollars for our births. So his thinking is like, I'm going to save money. And that was always his running joke with his coworkers, was like, oh, we're doing this at home by ourselves because we're going to save money. So that was like always his way out. So basically it was a money issue that we didn't want a midwife. I had reached out to a few people. I actually worked with an RN who was like a traditional midwife as well. But she wasn't practicing, so she couldn't do it. And I just didn't really have anybody else that was like knowledgeable in this area or willing to come. And so that's when I really decided unassisted, and the Facebook groups really helped me with that too, because it's like seeing people do this alone with their husbands. It just clicked and it made sense for me. And I thought, what's the worst that can happen? It's not going to be worse than the hospital. So yeah, that was kind of our decision in that point.
That's awesome. And so then you're going through your pregnancy, you're preparing and everything, and you get to the moment where you realize, hey, I'm in labor and this is going down. So walk us through what that went like. And we actually have some video of that too, but walk me through what that looked like. So if you're listening on the podcast, you want to go to the YouTube channel and check this out, but walk me through what's happening a little bit as you are in that moment.
Absolutely. Okay, so we laid the kids down around 8 p.m. I'm laying on the couch. My husband's playing video games, and I'm on the couch. And it's about 11 at night, right? 11 p.m. I woke up on the couch, and mind you, I was on the couch watching birth videos. So I was preparing my mind, and I was also on YouTube just watching. Honestly, I wanted to see the physiology, and I wanted to it really help with my mindset to like see everything happening on video, but not just like a birth video. I was listening to people explain how to engage your baby. And so I encourage you guys like get on YouTube, watch those videos while you're, almost in labor or when you're full term, because it really does something to your mind. And so 11:15, I woke up and I thought I just had a little discharge, like normal, because at the end of pregnancy, you have that. And I had an adult diaper on because I had been having some discharge, but nothing like labor. And so I woke up and it was leaking, but I went back to sleep. And then I woke up again. I stood up and it was a gush. And so that's how I knew, okay, this is it. But the crazy thing is, with the contractions, there was no pain. And all I felt was a tingly sensation up here at the top. And I had been believing for supernatural pain free birth. And so honestly, it felt so good. Like I was so excited. Like the tingling felt just amazing. Like it was a full contraction, but all I felt was a tingle at the top of my uterus. I don't know if anybody can relate, but that's how it felt. And it was very supernatural. So about 11:20, I got up from the couch. I told my husband, babe, my water broke. So he just got up and hugged me. We started smiling. We were kissing. We were hugging. I've never felt so in love with my husband. And he agrees. It was a very sensual, almost like sexual moment. It was so bizarre. Like the entire birth, we were so in love, and we had never felt that before. And so he went downstairs and started prepping everything. But I kind of left one key part out, was that before I laid on the couch, I was having moments of doubt, and I didn't know I was in labor at all because I wasn't having steady contractions, but I was doubting. And I remember going to the bathroom and feeling doubt, and my husband was there, and I told him, babe, what if we have to go to the hospital? Like, what do we do? Or, I'm scared, basically. And in that moment in the bathroom, he hugged me and he started to remind me of the story of Mary and Joseph. And, he's a man of God, but he's kind of like in a transition. Anyway, so it was amazing that he brought up the story of Mary and Joseph. And he was like, remember how they did it? Remember how they did it in a barn with nobody else? It was just Joseph that delivered the baby Jesus. And, we can do it too. And we have that power in us. And he was just speaking these faith words over me. So I think that's too why I went into labor, is because of that peace, that security that my husband gave me. I laid on that couch and my body just said, okay, it's time, because we're peaceful, we're happy, and this is going to happen. I was only 38 weeks. But yeah, so 11:30, my waters kept leaking. My husband went ahead and set up the basement for me with the music and the candles and the lights, the twinkle lights. He turned everything on. It was all ready to go, but he just turned it all on for me. He put on my Christian hypnobirthing app, and I just started listening to that. At this point, I was leaking clear / like pink tinged fluid, and it smelled sweet. So I knew that sweet smell, that's your bag of waters breaking. So that's kind of how you know. And I wasn't concerned because it was just tinged with pink. But yeah, so we went downstairs and he was prepping all of that. At midnight, I changed into my birth dress. He went upstairs to go to bed. He was like, you're going to be okay. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like nothing was hurting. So he just went to bed. At midnight, I was like laboring, swaying, doing all of that jazz. In fact, I fell asleep for a while myself. I think I slept for like an hour or two. So do you want me to keep going, or just for the big start of the birth?
No, let's keep going. And if people want to fast forward through this, they can, but I want you to hear the birth story and I want to go back to what Su-Yin said earlier, was that she had that doubt in her head, right? And her husband speaking faith over her, but she was watching videos, y'all. Like, surround yourself with positive birth stories. And if there are people speaking negative to you, about what you want your experience to be, you have to block that out and maybe just not talk to them about what you want to do. But like, surround yourself with what it looks like. And that's through books, that's through videos, that's through courses and classes, that's through testimonies, right? So like we have Restoring Birth, that's our book. And so you can get that book and it explains the physiological process. Like Su-Yin said, she wanted to know the physiological process of birth. Like it explains it out and talks about God's design. We have courses. What's funny is we have a baby daddy boot camp guide, and that's our next book coming out, which will be fun. But anyway, so like surround yourself. You've got Ina May, you've got, all amazing resources to be able to dig in and understand what birth is supposed to look like and what it can look like. So if this is something that you want and that you're striving for, surround yourself with that information, that education, that knowledge, that wisdom, and that encouragement. So anyway, but yes, I want you to continue. And our birth story podcast, guys, just so you all know, they'll be longer podcasts because we want you to hear the stories because this is where you borrow courage from. So please continue with your story.
Absolutely. So, you know, 115, I'm writing this out. I'm like journaling a little bit through my birth so that I can have a good solid birth story. And I remember writing, I have my worship music on. I feel really peaceful. I feel excited. I'm just ready to meet him. So it's been about 2 hours now. That's what I wrote in my journal. And I'm dancing to worship music at this point. And again, with the tingling, it's just, I have belief for that supernatural birth. So really put your faith on it. Believe that you can have a pain-free birth because the way I described it, it said it was right at the top of my uterus / middle of my chest. I felt a numbing sensation. My entire uterus would harden like a contraction, and I would feel that numbness up top. So it was truly so supernatural. I never felt that before. And contractions don't have to hurt. It's just
Yeah.
squeezing. It doesn't have to hurt. It's just like your muscle. When you squeeze it, it doesn't hurt. So why does this have to hurt? It doesn't have to. So then 4 a.m. comes. I had taken a little nap. Contractions started picking up. We woke up my daughter because she was going to help out, and her room was in the basement. So she was kind of hearing things. So we woke her up to get up, start having like some healthy snacks. 4:10, my daughter writes an excerpt in my journal. She says, Mom feels leaking. She's starting to lean on the couch and gently rocking hips and pelvic movements, listening to Christian hypnobirthing. Dad is offering comforting words, and his presence is calming for Mom. He's trying to conserve some energy for the later part to come. So he was laying down again. Her water is broken. So my daughter was also kind of like journaling. She was 14 at the time. So cute. She's so sweet. So I believe at this point, about 4 o'clock, I was entering transition, which can be, a difficult time in labor. And I just remember kind of like having a little bit of discomfort for sure, trying to move around different places. And then at 5 o'clock, I tried laying down on the couch and just kind of like giving it a few pushes. Honestly, I felt from 5 to 6 the entire rest of the birth. So for the whole next hour, I felt really pushy. And I just let myself push. I pushed and pushed and pushed. And some people will tell you not to do that. I think it's important to do what your body feels good doing. And I feel like pushing feels really good for me. And I didn't tear. And I didn't bleed out or anything like that. So if your body feels that. So anyway, I'm giving some pushes on my back, just, kind of trying to rest because I hadn't really been able to lay on my back at all. And so I think I wanted that moment of rest. Doing a lot of breathing exercises. And at 6 o'clock, my daughter writes, now we see the purple line, because I asked about the purple line. This is an indication of dilation. So if you guys knew this or not, when you look at from your butt crack, the top of your butt crack, all the way up your back, the length of this purple line is how many centimeters dilated you are. And so they could see that line super clearly. And it looked like I was a whole full 10 centimeters. I mean, I was there. And so my daughter knew that too. And so as I was laying on my back, I started to feel down there. And that's the first time I ever felt down there. So this is, again, my fourth birth, my fourth child. And I had never reached down there and felt the head before, because in the hospital, it's kind of like not really welcomed. They don't really ask you or tell you to do that. And I don't know, I just never really thought to do that. So that was really cool. I felt down there and I felt this ridged, like hairy, like ridge. And it was just like a ridge. And I was like, okay, this is all the hair. This is his head. Like his head was there. So he had a ton of hair, by the way. He had a ton of hair that I could feel. And that was that ridge. But anywho, I get up from the couch because that's a little bit painful for me, laying on my back. I didn't really like that anymore. And I get in the shower. So I knew I wanted to be in water. And I also started to feel like, I couldn't breathe on my back. So I wanted to be able to breathe deeper. And so I said, I want to get in the shower. And they put me in the shower. So 6:15, I'm getting in the shower. This was the only time I got the shakes. I felt cold, and our basement was cold. So I think that's what that was just like the coldness of getting in the shower. But once I was in, it felt so good. And with each contraction, I was definitely bearing down, definitely pushing. Wasn't really expecting him to fall out in the shower. I didn't think I was that close. I just was pushing with each contraction. And I was leaning over. I had my hands on top of the wall of the shower, and I was just leaning over, and that felt so good. No pain whatsoever. And I was 10 centimeters, his head was there, I was pushing, but no pain whatsoever. And so that hot water just felt so good. It never stopped being hot. Thank the Lord. I was in there for an hour. It never stopped being hot. But even though, um, it kind of felt like a long time. It really wasn't that long. We had the book by Heather Baker, Home Birth on Your Own Terms. And so I remember asking my husband towards the end of the shower, it felt like I had to poop, right? I knew this feeling meant his head would be crowning soon, and I have that urge to poop. Some surges caught me by surprise, so I felt like I almost froze up a little bit. And I kind of let my body do what was comfortable, which was bear down. So again, I felt like my bottom was all kind of one organ just working together. It was kind of bizarre. Like my stomach and my bottom felt like one, and it was all kind of like numb and tingly. And I reached down a few times to feel his head. My husband kept bringing me like more herbs, and I'm more of like a plant versus pill kind of girl. So he was bringing me some herbs to help out. I also used a gentle birth tincture. So he was bringing me that in the shower, and bringing me herbs. And he continued to encourage me to breathe. He says I was in and out of the bathroom. I was in there for 45 minutes. So, and then the birth comes. So Brandon went ahead and grabbed our book because I asked him to, and he started to look up fatigue because I felt super tired. And I told him, babe, I'm really tired. I don't think I can do this. And that is the key term that you're about to do this. You say, I don't think I could do this. And I felt really tired. So I told him, go in the book and look up fatigue, right? And what's crazy is that he looked it up and he saw in the book, and by quote, if you feel like giving up, you suddenly feel a bit panicky, like you can no longer do it, then your baby is coming very soon. And this is him reading out loud. And this helped me a lot. It's very therapeutic. In the book, it said, don't pant, breathe in deeply and out slowly. Moan, picture your body opening and the baby moving down and out. Get in the water if you have not already. Turn on some chanting on music or nature sounds. Let your body relax fully. If you want it to go quicker, get in a position that works with gravity. If labor slows because you're in the water, you want to be done, stand up or get out. It's fine to get a break, but staying there or trying to run from the work your body is trying to do will not make the baby come quicker. Do you want to have 100 more contractions or 20? So this is a literal quote from the book that he's reading me, an excerpt. And so
and say the name of that book again. So if they want to get it, they can.
Home Birth on Your Own Terms by Heather Baker.
Yeah. And we'll try to put a link to it in the down below as well.
Yeah, that was our saving grace, because in that moment, I really felt like I couldn't do it. I felt so tired. I was out of breath. I was in the shower, yes, pushing, not in pain, but feeling like, man, this is taking forever. And so when he found that excerpt and I read that, it made so much sense, because standing is good, but squatting is the best, I think, to push a baby out. If you're ready and you're done, squatting is the best. And so that's what I really needed to hear. It was like, yes, I'm comfortable in the water, but I want my baby out now. So the book kind of told me what to do. It was like, get out of the water. Okay. So at that point, I got out of the shower, and as the book stated, I sat on the toilet, right? I'm here squatting on the toilet to try to bring my baby down. And within seconds, his head was out. His head was there. I reached down and my baby's head was out, and I felt it, and I yelled in that moment. I felt so much relief, and I yelled to my daughter, hurry, get the video. And so she went and got the phone to take the video in that moment. And then and my husband was like scrambling, right? He was like somewhere else. So I remember yelling to him, I need you. And that's where my video starts. So if you guys go and watch my video on the YouTube page, you'll see that's exactly where my video starts. My daughter's recording and I'm yelling at him, I need you. And I'm sitting here on the toilet with my baby's head out. And so my husband runs into the bathroom, and he's like, I'm here. And you guys will see the video from there. I mean, from there, it's just him telling me, stand up, He tells me, stand up. I stand up. My baby's head is completely out. He gets behind me and I'm still over the toilet, but I'm standing. So he's behind me and he sees the baby. And actually, we also had a cord around the neck. And so he tells me the cord's around the neck and I tell him, take it off. And so all he does is he lifts the cord, takes it off of his head and he is completely fine. And then I told him, I had no ring of fire. Honestly, I didn't know the head was out until I felt it out. I didn't push his head out. It just came out fur, right? And so in my husband's words, and I looked behind you and I had placed my hand right behind his neck for support, like as a way to grab. And with the other hand, I was going around the other side of his head. And then you pushed once more and I saw that the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. So what I did was I told you the cord's around his neck and you told me to take it off. So then I got the cord, I pulled it off his neck to give it slack and left it in place. I started to worry about his shoulders and fear came about broken shoulders because he was coming out quick. Thankfully, that didn't happen. She took another moment and then she gave it one good push and his whole body just slid out. I then grabbed his neck firmly with one hand and his bottom with the other hand and then passed the baby to her underneath her legs. So that's my husband's words. So it was, I knew in my head, from my hospital births, I didn't want to push too fast. And once his head was out, I wanted to wait for a contraction for the rest of the body to come versus like forcefully pushing it. And my husband was kind of a little panicky. You'll see in the video, he's kind of like, babe, his head is out. In my head, I'm like, just wait. I told him, just wait. I told him, I'm breathing, I'm panting, and I know I don't want to tear. So I'm like, waiting. And then, when I felt that contraction come, I just gave it a good push and his body really did just slide out. He was 10 pounds, 5 ounces or 8 ounces, 10 pounds, 8 ounces. He was a big chunk. So you'll see that in the video, but that's our birth story.
That is amazing. And I love like the communication that you guys had throughout that. I love that you had him write down, like take this tip, ladies. I love that you had him write down the experience from his standpoint, right? Like I love that. So then once that he's born, right? What is your postpartum like at that point? Like, so he's born, then you are birthing the placenta. And did you stay positioned there to birth the placenta or did you move?
No, I moved. So after about 10 minutes on the toilet, he's telling me, you're bleeding. You need to get up. Let's get you to lay down. And so, I'm sitting on the toilet. I'm holding my baby. I'm a little shaky. I'm just, trying to transition into this. And I'm still attached. My placenta's still in and the baby's still attached. So I go to lay down on the couch in the basement and, I'm starting to try to put him to nurse, but I'm also very uncomfortable in that moment. I think it's important if you do want to go unassisted with your husband, maybe hire someone to come after, someone like a doula to come by after, because husbands don't really, it's going to take a lot of training for them to know exactly what to do. And not that it's dangerous, but just for your support, just for you to, not have to do anything. I think in that moment, I would have liked to call a doula and be like, hey, come over, baby's here. So I was laying on the couch. I should have nursed more. His placenta didn't come for 8 hours. So that was kind of bizarre. Yeah. And that's not normal in a hospital birth, because in a hospital, once again, like I wanted that with my Lotus birth, right? My son before this. But they shot me up with Pitocin. They cut his cord to help the placenta come faster. So in a hospital birth, they don't really let you wait 8 hours for your placenta. So that was kind of weird. So I was laying there on that couch. I fell asleep. I did get up at one point. So I think about 2 hours. 2 hours we let go by, and no placenta would deliver. I hadn't gotten up to go pee, so I do recommend doing that too. Go nursing and go pee. But in the moment, I wasn't thinking these things. So that's why I say a doula is a good thing, or a sheet, to like all line for you. What should I do? Because you kind of forget in the moment how to take care of your own self. So had I been nursing, had I gotten up and gone pee, it probably would have came sooner. So we waited about 2 hours. Then we decided, okay, let's cut the cord, because maybe if we cut the cord, the placenta will just come faster or better because that's how it is in the hospital. I don't know if that's really true, but that was our mindset. Obviously, it was white, it was not pulsating, it was completely done with, right? So we go ahead and cut the cord. We get all that taken care of. Baby gets wrapped up. They lay him down. I get up to take a shower, just rinse myself off, and still no placenta. So my butt feels really heavy. This is 2 hours after birth. My butt just feels so heavy. I sit down, I try to pee, and I try to kind of push it out on the toilet. Still nothing, won't come. Um, Not really painful, not having a lot of contractions, not bleeding out, nothing totally abnormal, just the placenta wouldn't come. So I'm praying, I lay down, I still have my worship on. Um, Really weird. Then I go to take a bath because I'm like, well, maybe that will get it out. And I know like it's probably not the best thing to do, but hey, it's home birth, right? So I go take a bath. I have some Epsom salt in there, and then I'm trying to give it some pushes in the bath and it still won't come. So again, 8 hours. So I lay back down. I'm nursing again. I think the nursing does help. And I'm having some after pains more at this point. So then I finally get up and I'm like, I'm going to get this thing out. I go to the toilet and I go pee and then it comes right out, push it out on the toilet. I knew it was coming because I felt, again, really heavy, that heaviness. And I had a bucket right by the toilet. So I just went ahead and pushed it out into the bucket. So that was 8 hours later. And then finally, once I had it out, I felt good to like call people and like FaceTime my mom and FaceTime my family and like, hey, we had a baby. Because before it came out, I just felt like, God, I might have to go to the hospital. I don't want this to scare people. I don't want to scare my family. Like this just isn't really done yet. And so I honestly like that time. It was kind of a processing time for me too with the Lord. Just praying and thanking the Lord for my baby. And, it gave me some time to process. And so I kind of like that. And so, yeah, that's after 8 hours in the morning. I went and called my mom and that she came later that day. But I'm glad that it was just me and my husband because I think that's why the birth went so well. My mom kind of brought a lot of fear into the next birth. So looking back, I'm like, it's really good. My husband was just there.
Yeah, and I want to speak to this a little bit in terms of like having other people at your birth, right? And yes, so I told my husband, I was like, all right, we're going to have a photographer and, videographer and like all these people there or whatever. And he was like, you're going to have like a whole army here. What do you need me for? And I was like, oh, when God created this, the intimacy that he created, he wants us to turn to him. He wants us to pull in him. And our husband is an instrument in that because he is the earthly figure of that intimate relationship that we get with the Father. And so when you are pulling your husband out, or, he's pulling himself out a lot of times because men just aren't taught that. It's not their fault. I mean, look at what Hollywood tells us about birth and then what they translate about birth. Like, they don't hear anything about how they are ordained to be part of this experience with us and the Father. And so it's not their fault. But like it matters so much. Just like before birth, she was talking about the whole oxytocin thing and all of that, right? And how it was such an intimate, almost sexual experience. Like that matters. Those hormones matter. And I'm going to tag that onto it matters to deliver the placenta as well. So at the end of that experience, you want skin to skin, you want to be nursing, you don't want that baby to leave you basically, and you want to keep nursing the entire time as best as possible, as much as they'll take. And even if they're not like mine, so my fourth was a slow nurser. Like he didn't want to latch. It was a little bit of, a long journey, and we'll talk about that later. But like so he didn't want to latch. So there had to be, other ways. There had to be nipple stimulation and other things to be able to get that oxytocin going for the placenta to come out. So it matters that you know these things and you're aware of these things. And a cheat sheet is a fantastic idea. And I love the idea of having a doula come in like afterwards too, right? And what's funny is I tell people all the time, like I'm a doula, I'm a childbirth educator, like but I don't necessarily advocate that everybody needs a doula in that situation. If your husband is strong enough and can advocate for you, he is supposed to be that person for you. He is supposed to be that strength, that pillar in those moments. He just doesn't know that he's supposed to be, and it's okay to give him grace in that. And so finding someone to be able to help him in those moments matters as well. But I love the idea of a doula coming in like, hey, the baby's here. Come on over and hang out, clean up the mess. Um, but So then what was your postpartum experience like? This was your first home birth, your first free birth. How did it compare to your postpartum experiences with your other births?
No comparison. Euphoric, beautiful. Like I was in heaven. Like I was floating on clouds for weeks. I was so in love. I was so happy. Nothing could upset me. I felt a little overwhelmed at about a week postpartum when my mom left. I will say that. But for that first week, I mean, I was so in love and my body was healing so well. And when I tell you, my husband and I found this bond that we had never had. We were so in love. I tell you, I had just given birth, right? It's messy, it's nasty, it's weird, it's smelly. He was telling me I'm sexy. He was like, "You're beautiful, you're sexy, like I love you, you're my wife." Like he was just telling me these things he never says. And I was just like, this moment of just pure bliss.
Yeah.
And that's a whole first week. I mean, I was in love and I encapsulated my placenta for the first time. I did it myself, actually, like 3 days postpartum. And that too was like a completely different experience. And it was like, I can't say enough good things. And I know it's controversial and some Christian women are like, oh, I don't do that because it's an organ. Like, I don't know about all of that. But all I know is that when I took my pills, it was like, it's like taking a happy pill. It's like taking like a, I don't know, Viagra for men, like women version of Viagra. Like it's just like gives you so many happy feelings. So I just remember pure joy in this postpartum, and that's how it's set apart from the hospital experiences because it's and you have to understand this about the medical community. If they don't mean to be snappy or rude or nasty, but think about it. If you have a nurse that just lost her son or just had a divorce, she comes in, she's in a snappy mood, and you just gave birth 5 minutes ago, she's not going to give you this happy experience. She's not going to give you smiles and joy and make you, she's probably going to be snappy and rude. And a lot of you have probably experienced that. So you have to understand the medical community, they're just people, they're just
Right.
humans. And you're taking on all of their junk. Like when doctors are rude, I mean, again, I've worked in labor and delivery. I see it. They're tired, right? They're just out of birth. They slept for 2 hours. Now they're back at the hospital. They're trying to sleep in their little closet room to sleep in, and they can't because you keep telling them to come out and check the mom. And then, they're tired. They're zombies, right? And so you're taking on everybody else's stuff when you go to the hospital. So I just encourage you guys really think about that. Do you want all of these spirits and souls and influences and words and voices and people touching you and talking to you? Or do you want it to just be you and your husband, your loved ones, just marveling over the miracle of life and nothing more? I mean, to me, that postpartum experience is just night and day, and I do it all over again at home.
That was the one, one of the big things that we noticed was the postpartum experience with home birth is so much different. I had two and two to compare, and it's so much different in all honesty, and I know not everyone feels comfortable. And here's the deal. If you don't feel comfortable having a home birth, don't have a home birth because you know what's going to happen? You're going to stall out and end up going to the hospital anyway. Like that, don't put yourself in a position where your body is uncomfortable. Some people start out. I have friends that are like, yeah, home birth, free birth, I'm going in, right off the bat. I worked up to it, I'll say, and so did Sue. But like, it matters that you choose for you and your body. And I talk about this all the time, but you don't have a people pleasing birth plan and idea, right? It has to be for you. So, but anyway, I thank you so much for sharing your story. I love it. And we're going to hear another birth story from you that is absolutely amazing as well. And if you all have questions, like if you want to know more things about this birth experience, or if you have questions about anything that we talked about, and I will say this too. So if you're in faith-based birthing or you've ever heard me speak or talk or, read or done anything that I do, so I don't promote hypnobirthing and I don't promote placenta encapsulation, but at the same time, you get to choose you. Like you're on your journey, it's just like election stuff, politics, anything else, you get to choose you. You are on your journey. And so you get to do where the Father directs you and where he leads you in this because it's your choices. And so anyway, but like, so I will allow anyone on my program because I interviewed a lady one time and I had someone go, "Oh, well, I thought you didn't like da da da." It doesn't mean that she doesn't, and it's totally okay that she does. So like, but any questions that you have about anything, please post them below. We will answer you. I promise you. Sue will get back to you. I will get back to you. Any of our staff will get back to you. Like we will get back with you and answer your questions. And if we don't know an answer, we'll find somebody who does, just so you know. But anyway, and I want to reference another thing. You were talking about that you were standing up and you were swaying your hips, and you were feeling no pain and all this kind of stuff. Did you know that there is actually a scripture and it's in Isaiah and it talks about how women are swaying, like, right? And I'll have to read the scripture to you. We'll talk about that afterwards. And it's in the book. But anyway, and I call it the Penny Simpkin rhythm. And that's when I realized there was no pain. Because with my second birth, I was testing everything out. And I was like, oh, does this hurt? Yeah. Oh, does this hurt? Yeah. Oh, does that hurt? Yeah. Like I'm moving around. And I'm realizing that as I'm standing and as I'm swaying, and I was like moving my hips, right? Like you've got the rotation in your hips, and I'm just swaying back and forth and moving whatever. And I'm patting, there was no pain. And I was like, oh, and that was my revelation moment of like, oh, wow. So then the Father takes me to the scripture and there's a Hebrew word, it's cool. And so they use that in this instant, but it's translated to talk about pain coming with childbirth. And the Father's like, I want you to look at the Hebrew. We'll dig into this. And it means to sway, to dance, to twirl. And I was like, are you kidding me? My mind was blown. Anyway, so I'll leave you with that. Go and look up that Hebrew word. If you have any questions, again, post them. Thank you so much for listening to the Faith-Based Birthing Podcast. We're excited that you're here, and let's know more about what you want to hear. We share birth stories, we share experts, we share teachings so that you can gain knowledge and wisdom to have an amazing fear-free birth and restore it back to its God-intended purpose. So we love you so much, and we'll see you later. Bye.